Phil and I only met 3 times maybe in our mutual careers, but we both belong to the generation of science fiction writers who began to get published in the late 40s and early 50s. And there are other ways in which we found ourselves linked. We were both had our first stories published in startling stories. His of far more consequence than mine, because his was The Lovers, which became a breakthrough novella about alien love and deception and sex. And Phil continued to work on the frontiers. He was 4 years older than me, but I got published 3 years earlier. And even though his novella appeared in 1952, before the World Science Fiction Convention in Philadelphia, where we met for the first time in 1953, I had a novella published in Galaxy called Wherever You May Be. And we were even linked. I met Phil there for the first time, or even linked in Isaac Asimov's first volume, his autobiography, when he accounts in one paragraph meeting both Phil and me, and at that convention for the first time too. And he said Phil was a better writer, but I was better looking. The second time we met was after Phil's aborted freelance career, when his novel won the Galaxy novel contest, I.O. for the Flesh. And he did not get the $4,000 prize, which got unfortunately taken away. And he went back to writing. He went to Los Angeles and began working in technical writing for the aerospace industry. And it was there when I was in Los Angeles in business, and probably in the mid-60s, that Phil had a party for me at his home and invited many of the leading lights of West Coast science fiction there. And the only one of whom I remember clearly was A. Van Vogt, whom I had originally met for the first time at the San Francisco Convention of 1954, though seeing him only briefly. And then he was pleased that he presented a copy of Galaxy with one of my stories in it for my signature. And then finally, we met for the final time, as I recall, at a first Kansas City fan convention put on by Ken Keller, in which we were co-guests of honor at the Milbach Hotel, and we had a chance to get far better acquainted at that time. But in the meanwhile, Phil's career had blossomed. He had turned back to full-time writing, moved to Peoria, Illinois, his birthplace, and began exploring the far distant corridors and avenues and frontiers of science fiction, with really trailblazing narratives exploring areas that were finally available to science fiction writers for the first time. He was a great in person for exploring these things and making them available and creating a marvelous example of what could be done that people thought before could not. And I guess the last kind of connection that we had is that we both were named Grand Masters of Science Fiction by the Science Fiction Writers of America. A great writer, a great person to know, even though we did not get a chance to really get acquainted as we might have been if we'd been closer.